Hello everyone and welcome to today's lesson. I'm sorry I can't be here with you in person today. I'm hoping this recording helps. It will cover in some of the things that we would cover in a course. So today we're going to look at week 4, which is about informative texts. Now at any point in this video, you can stop it, pause it, fast forward or rewind. So if you're doing any activities, it's always a good idea, I think, to pause the video. So you've got time to think before the video carries on. All right. So you've also got the leisure of having this to go back over if you want to review anything as well. So I hope this is useful to you. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be looking at informative texts, in particular news articles. Now, we've looked at two different types of texts already. We looked at descriptive, which I'm hoping you'll remember is stories, biographies, and generally any non-fiction text written in a fiction style, so like travel writing, for example. We've also looked at instructions, things like recipes, health and safety posters, those kinds of texts where they're telling you how to do something or what to do. So this is informative, which means to tell you about something. Okay, so here are some examples of different types of informative text you might come across. For example, you've got newspaper articles, reports, journals, non-fiction texts, textbooks, and leaflets. Okay, this isn't an exhaustive list. There are plenty out there, but just a few examples here for you to think about. So what's our objective today? We're going to identify language and presentation features which typically belong to newspaper articles. We're going to identify and analyze examples of fact, opinion, and bias from text. And we're going to plan and compose a newspaper article as well. So that's the aim of today's lesson. Okay. So to get us started thinking about how a news article looks, what I would like you to do, firstly, I think it's good if we just go and have a look at one. So I'd like you to go to one of the following websites below and find a newspaper article about a current issue. Okay, it should be a news article page, not a video clip. We're working with text for this. This kind of thing you typically would do for your reading exams. So you can either go to BBC's website, the UK News, the Daily Mail Online, the Telegraph, or the news on the Sun. So do have a look at these. If any of them ask you to sign up and pay, please don't. Just choose a different website instead. These websites tend to change their policies and their services, so just have a look at them. Please don't pay for any newspaper articles. So as you read the article, I'd like you to note down answers to the following question. What is the main purpose of the text? Remember, you need to start with to instruct, to inform, to explain, persuade, so on. I'd like you to try and find them for your second activity, 3 quotes within the text which supports the writer's argument. Explain how they support the writer's view. So for example, if you're looking at something that says, for example, we should wear face masks in the current climate, then you need to find something in the text that says that. If the writer's arguing we should wear them, you might find something like, face masks are a necessary, important part of day-to-day life to keep us safe, or something like that. So find a quote to back up what you're looking for. The very last thing is to look at how organizational features are used, and are they used effectively? So remember, organizational features is about the appearance, the presentation of your text, what's on it, how does it look? So things like the color, tables, enlarged quotes, for example. So think about these. How are presentations used in the text? Okay, so we said, what is the main purpose of the text? So remember, we're looking at informative. So it should have been straight away to inform. And then to finish off your answer, say what it's about, to inform the audience about what? Find 3 quotes within the text which supports the writer's argument. So if you found 3 texts that explicitly say what the writer is arguing for. So for example, if they're arguing that we need to do more to tackle global warming, you should find 3 quotes that have supported that. So if you got that, fantastic. And how are organization features used? So hopefully you've looked at your articles and you found things like in news articles, you'd normally find things like bold headings, you'd find links to other pages, you'd find images to make it clear, structured paragraphs, all sorts of things, really. So as long as you found 3 organization features which are suitable, that's fantastic. Okay. So the idea of this activity is normally that you would discuss this, okay? But instead, I want you to reflect and think. I'd like you to draw in your textbooks this table, and you've got 3 columns there. You've got to persuade, to instruct, and to inform. And what I'd like you to do is write down a list in these of all the different things you would find between the 3 texts as best you can, okay? So you might want to think about the type of language they use. So for example, persuade, you'll find more persuasive language. And you might want, and I'd like you to think about the organizational features as used. So instructive, for example, we would see numbered lists telling you how to complete a task. Okay. So the idea of this is going to make a little revision table for you to know what are the difference between the 3 very different genres. Okay. So you may need to look over your notes for this. You may need to do some additional study if you're not sure, but try and think about texts we've covered. Think about things you've come across any day, say for persuasive. Think about any adverts you've come across and try and think, right, what's specific to them? Think about instructions you've come across and the informative text as well, whether it's leaflets, newspaper articles, whatever. Okay. So informative text, one of the things that is generally interesting about informative texts is that they have different styles. You have reports and you have articles, but most of them will generally include some sort of fact or opinion. So you can see here, fact is a fact supported by one or more shreds of evidence. That could be statistics, research findings, for example. And a fact is true and correct for everyone, no matter what. So some have generally say fact is anything that's true. It's actually not completely correct. It's anything that has evidence to support it's true. Okay. Opinion, on the hand, is an element of belief, a view which hasn't been validated or proven. It's a viewpoint. So there are usually words where you might find examples of this. So for example, words like I think, feel, many people, my opinion. They're general starters used to tell people that it's your viewpoint. They're not always going to write like that. There are people who present their views very much as facts. Happens a lot in politics, for example. But you will always need to remember that a fact will have evidence, an opinion will not. Maybe while I reshare my screen. Okay, so in the PowerPoint, there is a video which I would like you to look at. So if you open up the PowerPoint, I'd like you to click on the link on the slide that says the blur between facts and opinions in the media. If you click on this, in fact, no, we should be able to watch this now. So let's watch this together. Try and watch this and think, what is the difference between fact and opinion?
Understanding the news used to be simpler. Newspapers, radio, and TV usually made a clear distinction between objective fact that can be proven and opinion crafted by their writers and producers. They used terms like editorial, op-ed, and commentary to distinguish opinionated content from more objective reporting. But over the years, the internet has helped blur the line between fact and opinion in the media. Now there are virtually limitless sources creating content online, and terms like editorial and op-ed have all but faded away. There's also no vetting process or authority that requires anyone to mention if their online content is fact or opinion. Just to be clear, opinions are not inherently bad things when it comes to reporting the news. They can provide new context or a different perspective. Opinions have also played an influential part in history, such as when news anchor Walter Cronkite shared his personal views on the Vietnam War in 1968. Of course, perspectives like that were typically designated as opinion. But these days, we seem to have lost some of our ability to detect opinion-based material if it isn't properly labeled. Unfortunately, there are content creators out there who are happy to take advantage of that. They mix opinions in with a few facts to make their perspective seem more credible. This helps fire up your emotions and keep you engaged with their content. At this point, you may be thinking that you could tell the difference between fact and opinion. Well, it may be harder than it looks. A Pew Research study created 5 factual statements and 5 opinion statements, and then asked people to identify which was which. Out of 5,000 adults, only 35% correctly identified all 5 opinion statements, while only 26% identified all of the factual statements. That means the vast majority either saw facts as opinions or accepted opinions as fact. Misinterpretations like these could easily lead to confusion and difficulty in discussing the news with others. The study also found that people were more likely to view an opinion as fact if that opinion matched their existing beliefs. The blur between fact and opinion likely won't get better anytime soon, so it's up to us to spot the difference. For instance, watch out for statements that may seem factual, but are actually opinions that favor a certain perspective. And while you may still find terms like editorial every now and then, don't rely on them to help you distinguish fact from opinion. Finally, avoid news sources that care more about stoking your anger and fears over reporting objective news. Though it may be difficult, recognizing fact and opinion in the media can make a tremendous impact on how you see the world.
GCF Global, creating opportunities for a better life.
Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is have a think for a minute. Think about what we've discussed and try and think, how do you know the difference between fact and opinion? Again, I'd like you to write a table in your book with 2 columns, one side for facts, one on opinions, and list down different features you'd expect to see in facts and opinions. Okay, what I'd like you to do is on this slide, it says, have a read of another news article from one of your classmates. Of course, we can't do that at the moment. So what I'd like you to do is find 3 examples on facts and 3 examples of opinions from the text that you found earlier as best you can. Okay, so I'd like you to try and find 3 facts and 3 opinions. Okay, these are things you typically get asked to do in practice tests and exams for your reading, so definitely good practice for you. Okay. We also find, if we think back to that video, it was saying the fact that opinions are often being expressed as facts. This is often something true in bias, okay? So bias, it says here, is the action of supporting or opposing a particular person or thing in an unfair way because of allowing personal opinions to influence your judgment. What it really means is that a bias is to be heavily very in favor of one side of an argument. If you have a debate about, let's say, global warming, like we said earlier, if someone is heavily in favor of need to take drastic action, let's say, like, for example, Extinction Rebellion, their bias is that they're very much in favor and support that view. Whereas if we look at a different other side of the argument, there might be those who say, oh, well, global warming is just a myth and it's a load of rubbish. And you generally find bias is not in the middle, okay? If you look at the seesaws here, what I'm trying to show to you here is that an opinion is split into 2 categories. You've got neutral, firstly. I agree or disagree. I neither agree or disagree, rather. Okay, so I'm not for, I'm not against it. And then you've got this idea that, okay, that's not good, it's not great to think that way, that's bad, or that's good, okay, not bad. Okay, these are opinions. So these are 3 levels of opinions. Bias, however, is more, if we think about that seesaw, someone's tipped the scale all the way, saying things like, that's rubbish, that's awful, worst thing ever, that's terrible, or on the plus, that's amazing, brilliant, best idea ever, that's terrific. These are examples of bias. So if you're ever asked in a practice test for a bias statement, you're looking for these very one-sided viewpoints, which only consider a half of the argument. So I'd like you to have a look at these 3 statements. You've got 3 here. Sandra is a member of Parliament arguing for a tax increase. What might her argument be for this? Lydia is trying to sell a motorbike for £3,500 to a customer. Why might be she biased about the bike? What might she say? And you've got Francis is reading the news live. He's interrupted by his colleague. How might this affect his view of his colleague? What might he think about the colleague later? have a pause for a minute, have a think on these statements. What I'd like you to think about is, what would their argument be? Okay, answer the questions. So Sandra, what might her argument be for this? Thinking about bias. Lydia, what might she say? And Francis, what might he think about the colleague later? Okay. So if you pause the video and start and just have a think about these for a couple of minutes. Okay, so how did you get on? Well, if we're looking at these three, Sandra is a member of parliament arguing for a tax increase. What might her argument be? Well, obviously, there's a number of possibilities you could choose from, but we'd probably be looking for things like the fact that there's not enough money for the economy to go, there's not enough money for public services, there's not enough money out there to provide benefits. What Sandra would do is use a topic to help perhaps exaggerate her claim slightly there. Okay. And if we've got Lydia who's trying to sell a motorbike for £3,500 to a customer, why might she be biased about the bike and what might she say? Well, Lydia would be biased because she is the person trying to sell it. She wants a sale, so she's not likely to say anything bad about it. So she's going to say, this is an excellent motorbike. It's in fantastic nick. It's great. It's good on the mileage. It's low petrol. She might even ignore things like the fact that, it costs, I don't know, £100 to fill up the tank all the way or something like that. So she'd be trying to make a hard sale there. And you've got Francis is reading the news live. He's interrupted by his colleague. How might this affect his view of his colleague and what might he think about the colleague later? Well, imagine you was in that situation where you're reading the news, okay, and suddenly you're interrupted by a colleague. You're talking about something, you're given information about what's going on in the world, and then suddenly while you're live on television, someone interrupts you. I would say you're not likely to be impressed. And things like that can damage professional relationships. If Francis takes that too personally, he may not be impressed with his colleague. That can lead to things like either having a chat if they're more amicable, or escalating up the ladder, complaining to bosses, or potentially stewing on it if he's not the person who's likely to talk about these things. But it's not going to give him a very favourable view of his colleague. So these are all examples of bias that are happening in day-to-day life. Okay, I've got here a task on the screen, which will be better to see on the actual PowerPoint when you do it. Okay, you went to the event below, charity dinner for the Jane Burr Foundation. On Saturday, the 21st of September, the Jane Burr Foundation held a charity dinner in order to raise money for the local hospital. The dinner included an auction, a speech by the head of the Jane Burr Foundation, Mr. James Johnson, and a raffle with a selection of great prizes. The event raised more than its target of £2,500. Write a newspaper article about the event. Think about the layout of your article, the contents, and the tone of the article. Okay. So this is a scenario I'd like you to do for homework. And this is writing up your own newspaper article. So I'd like you to make it as professional as you can. In the real test, it's going to be handwritten. You won't be expected to draw drawings or anything like that. But if you could make this one as professional as you can, that would be really great, because I always like your work to be authentic. But I wanted to give you an advice about planning. These written tests often tend to trick you into thinking that the minute you start an exam question, you need to go with it like that. You need to just write the first thing that comes to your head. Sometimes you might be in an exam and you look at the person next to you and thinking, right, I need to start right away because that person has. It's not true. When you're writing, you should take 2 to 5 minutes to stop and think about what you want to write. You need to organize your thoughts. Think about, right, with little bullet points or a spider chart, think about what you want to write. And you've got these bullet points here, the layout of your article, the content of the article, the tone of the article, okay? You can use these to guide your planning. So firstly, you might think about, right, what is the layout? What do I need to include? What organization features? Then the content. Always good to introduce firstly what you're going to write about, then go into details, and then finish up. Beginning, middle, end. 3 paragraphs. You also should think about the tone of the article. Newspaper should be generally quite professional, should be aggressive, should be too informal, but not over the top formal either. So have a think about these and go over them. The suggested word count for this has got to be 200, 250 words. And remember, plan, write, proofread, and edit. And just so you know, there are other types of articles as well that you might want to research and practice. So, for example, as well as newspaper articles, you might want to think about blog writing, so online opinion blogs, film or product reviews, newsletters, or magazine articles. They're all things that might come up in your functional skills exams. Okay, so next I want to talk to you about your speaking and listening. Your speaking and listening will be taking place on Monday, the 6th of December. So that is actually next week. That is the plan for next week's lesson. Okay. The speaking and listening is going to include 3 things. Okay. It will include 5 to 10 minute talk or presentation. If you're level 1, you'll be given an informative talk. So you're talking about a hobby, an interest, and telling the audience about it. If you're level 2, you're doing a persuasive presentation, ideally with a PowerPoint, which is designed to get the audience to believe your point of view, okay, to follow it and agree with it. You have to take part in a 5 to 10 minute discussion about a pre-chosen topic, and you have to research for this topic, okay? So I am going to, when I'm back on Tuesday, send out the topic for you to have a look at so that you can research it. The idea of this isn't to form a presentation based on the discussion, just to have notes that you can bring to the class to chat and discuss the issue. You also will have a 5 to 10 minute Q&A about your presentation. Okay, you will have to be prepared to answer questions about your speaking and listening as well. So how do we prepare for this? Okay, well, firstly, I think the presentation or the talks are the biggest things that require prep work. So I'm going to put a link in the internet. I'd like us to watch a video which gives you 7 pieces of advice for creating
What do
a
developers
presentation.
build on the SendGrid API?
So
A
I'm going to share
service
that
to send
now.
a password
You can have
reset
a
to a
look at.
confused customer. A tool to send down.
Entrepreneurs. The like button, or if you haven't already, the subscribe button. Thanks so much, guys.
Hi, I'm Jason Tiedig. I help people overcome their fear of public speaking and deliver amazing presentations. And today I'm going to show you how to captivate your audience within the first 5 minutes.
Hey practitioners, today I'm going to be teaching you, with the help of my friend Dana Bluen, the top 7 tips for a great presentation. Dana Bluen is an entrepreneur currently living in Bangkok, Thailand, where he is a co-founder and CEO of a company called Mango Labs. Anyways, here's some of his tips. We all have to give presentations at different points in our life. That might be for school or work or an organization that you are involved with. No matter where we give the presentation or to who, we want to make sure that it has the impact on the audience and that it's memorable. These are 7 tips that are going to ensure that you nail the presentation and leave a lasting impression on your audience. Number 1, know your audience. The first step in preparing for any presentation should be to get a better idea of who your audience is. Knowing your audience will allow you to understand the type of content they are going to be expecting with regards to depth and technical detail. You wouldn't want to give the same presentation to a group of high school students who are interested in entrepreneurship that you would to a room full of startup founders and CEOs, because their expectations and level of understanding will be on completely different levels. Dig up as much as you can about who your audience is, what industries they work in, and what positions they generally hold. This allows you to really tailor the content and delivery of the presentation in a way that will really make it stand out and be memorable. Too many times people give killer presentations at one venue to a group made up of their core audience and then bomb on the same presentation to a different group because they didn't make the changes they needed to better address the new audience. Just because you kill it in one audience doesn't mean the same exact content will replicate the reaction with all audiences. Number 2, use structures to build on ideas. If you stand up and give a presentation and all the points you want to make are just tossed around randomly and they don't make any sense, not too many people are going to enjoy your presentation. And if they remember it, it's likely that it's not for the reasons that you want them to. However, if you structure your presentation in a way that each idea, each section builds on the one before it, you help your audience connect with the content and create logical links between the concepts. This is a great way to make more complex ideas easier for the audience to understand and remember. Number 3, use visuals. Another great tool to cement those ideas in the mind of your audience is to use visuals like charts, graphs, and infographics to illustrate and communicate a concept. As many as 65% of people are considered to be visual learners. So if you don't take this approach in your presentation, you are going to ignore the vast majority of the population. Using an image, regardless of if it's a picture, graph, or chart, can be a much more potent conveyor of information and has a much more powerful impact on the audience. A single image can convey so much information. Just like the old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. It really is. Think of the impact this can have when explaining data or results in a presentation. If you had to stand there in front of your audience and go through every data point verbally, it can get bad quickly. And this is much more common of an occurrence than you might think. But if you're able to visualize that data for your audience with a graph or chart, you instantly make it much more understandable and memorable. Showing someone 200% growth with a graph is much more exciting than explaining it while they're looking at the raw data. For example, if I took away the screen of this video and all you saw was black, it wouldn't be near as exciting. Number 4, repetition is your friend. Having a bit of structure in your presentation goes a long way in keeping the audience engaged because they can follow the information from step to step. But even more than just structuring the flow of the presentation, you also want to build in repetition. This encourages people to remember the key points of the presentation and helps it stick, which again makes it and you more memorable. A classic way to go about repetition is something Dana learned early on when he started his public speaking career. Another speaker at a big regional tech event came up to him after a talk and complimented Dana on his delivery and the depth of the material, but asked why he didn't use more repetition. Dana was a bit stumped because he never really thought about that before. The other speaker suggested that Dana start telling the audience what it is he wanted to tell them, just to give them a brief rundown of the key points. After that, move right into the body of the presentation and tell them exactly what was highlighted at the beginning, but obviously with more detail and extra elements that you add in to make the presentation stick. Then end the presentation by telling them what you just told them, reminding them of the key points and a brief summary for final repetition. Using this technique helps to reinforce the main points of the presentation at least 3 times, at the beginning, middle, and end. The key is to find a way to do this that it feels natural and not overly scholastic. And that takes practice, which we'll talk about later on. Tip number 5, have a story to tell. The difference between an average presentation that people zone out of and a great presentation that keeps them engaged is how you convey the information to the audience. A great way to convey the information or key points of your presentation is to use a story. By using a story, preferably an interesting one, you get your point across and you're creating a moment in the presentation that is memorable and easier for the audience to recall later. It's also hopefully going to be something that catches their attention, pulling them into what you were saying. One of the keys here, though, is that it has to be a story you can tell with commitment, and it has to be true. Always be honest with your audience, because if you're not, they will know, and you will have lost all credibility. Tip number 6, be relatable. Being relatable is actually one of the most important factors of your delivery. You want to be someone that your audience can relate to, that they would feel comfortable with talking to. Even when giving a talk as an expert on a topic, you want the audience to feel the relation. It helps them mentally engage with your content and remember you and your talk. Most people don't feel comfortable going up and talking to a stern authority figure, and no one wants to listen to someone with no confidence. So there's a fine balance you need to strike, and here's how. The most important thing you can do to come across as more relatable is to be authentic. Be yourself. Another great way to accomplish this is to work on coming across as relaxed, which can be difficult if you're not used to presenting, but this goes a long way to helping people see you as relatable. The final way you can be more relatable is to be enthusiastic about your presentation. Your enthusiasm will transfer to your audience, and now that you have enthusiasm in common, you will begin to see us more relatable. If you get all 3 of these techniques mastered, you will be well on your way to making it to your audience relate to you. Tip number 7, build your confidence with practice. This might be the last tip, but it is by far the most important one out of these 7. Confidence in what you do is by far the most important element of your presentation. Having confidence adds an authority to everything you say during your presentation, but you're not going to develop the confidence you need if you don't practice, and practice a lot. Whenever Dana gives a talk or presentation, he practices. He says for hours. Dana wants to make sure he has the timing down, that he knows every slide so he doesn't have to read off them. He knows what the next slide is so he can smoothly transition between them so that he will sound natural and authentic, and can explain the concepts and tell the stories with confidence. And this all comes with practice. When you are practicing a presentation, it's not enough to sit in front of your computer and go through it. You have to practice it in front of other people. Invite some friends over and have them give some feedback on your presentation and make improvements based on their feedback. No one gets it right the first time, but practice will get you towards perfect. With these 7 tips, you should be able to put together and deliver a masterful presentation that will wow your audience and make sure that they remember you and your topic. If you guys like this collaboration, be sure to check out Dana's YouTube channel and subscribe. He has tons of videos on entrepreneurship and self-development. I hope you guys like this video and learned something. And if you did, click the like button, or if you haven't already, the subscribe button. Thanks so much, guys.
Okay, so 7 points there that the video clip went through. There's 7 things you need to think about. So consider your audience, give yourself a good structure, use visuals, put repetition in, have a story to tell, be relatable, practice. But level 2, a little bonus one for you, be persuasive as well. Really try to sell your idea. You know, why are you correct, and why is what you say important? That will go a long way to passing your speaking and listening. So here's what you need to start thinking about, really, presenting to an audience. First, you need to consider a topic which you can talk about in detail, okay? So it could be hobby, work related, or a personal interest. Up to you. Think about how you could structure it. If it was a slideshow, what would be the key points of each slide be? And I'm going to give you a little worksheet so that you can work on this and plan it out. Obviously, we're not going to discuss our ideas in small groups today, but you can relay your ideas to me by email and I will get back to you. I'm on leave until Tuesday. I'll be back on a Wednesday. So if you have ideas going and you want to run them by me, feel free to drop me an email and I'll have a look at those. Okay. So to help you plan for your presentation, you need to have a look at the following document, which I'm going to send in an email with the link to this clip. it looks like this. Okay, so my speaking and listening presentation talk plan. So it gives you a breakdown of how to plan for your presentation. Okay, so it gets you to think about topics, gets you to narrow them down, try and think about what your question is, think about 5 points to talk about, and the order as well. Okay, so it's really getting you started to think about how you're going to structure what you're talking about before you start writing a draft. So do have a look at this. You'll also need to complete something else. And this is now not for the presentation part. This is for the discussion part. You need to complete the following worksheet. And I'd like you ideally to type this up so you can send it to me. This here is going to have all of your research notes in it. Okay, so the topic you're doing, which I will be emailing to you as soon as I receive it. It may be the Wednesday when I get back, but I will try to get it back before then. You put your name, you put your topic, and you put your key points of your research. So for example, if we were talking about global warming being a major issue to the planet, you'd have to look it up, look on news websites, use Google, research it, and think, what are the key points that support your argument? Now I'm going to attach the criteria for speaking and listening with this video link. Okay, so in your emails, you will see the criteria. So you know what you need to do in your assessment to pass. Now, speaking and listening is pass or fail. If you don't pass it, you can retake it. But as it's a pass or fail, you've got those criteria there. If you have a look at them, practice, you should be able to meet those. Okay, so the very last thing for you is to start planning. So to do this, you can complete the speak and listening BKSB section in the prepare menu. So we've been working in the learn menu. Now you might want to think about having a look in prepare. I'd also like you to create your 5 to 10 minute informative talks, or if you're level 2, persuasive presentations, and send them to me. We will be aiming to present them on the Monday when I'm back. So I would like to discuss the ideas with you for that. So when I get back, I will be sending out emails to see how you're getting on. And if any of you want to discuss it further, you can always give me a phone call or let me know so that I can call you and we can go through it together. So thank you for coming to today's lesson. I hope it's been useful, and I'll see you all the following week when I get back. Take care, everyone. Bye.